I have a secret too, Clark. You aren't the only hero in Smallville. Our world used to know me as Captain Comet.
Excuse me, but I'm a little behind the curve here. Who's Captain Comet? That question from young Clark Kent is one that some fans may also have. Who? Or maybe not. Maybe you've watched Naomi or read some of the various times he's come back. Captain Comet is a uniquely positioned character and one who has gone through long periods of dormancy/hiatuses since his creation. He's also something of a first in a way that is oft-times overlooked. And sometimes there are attributes that have been given to later characters that actually came from him. If you've been on this channel for a while, you know I have a soft spot for these classic, obscure, sometimes overlooked characters. Now, Captain Comet is not as obscure as most, but he's still worth taking a look at, and he emerges in an interesting era. So we're going to be taking a look at his origin and when he arose in the Atomic Age, or the Atom Age. I'm Sasha, this is Casually Comics, and you will believe that a man can do a whole bunch of stuff, because Captain Comet has a lot of powers. As mentioned, this video is going to focus on the classic era of Captain Comet, because there's some history I want to hit, and I really want to hone in on him. And I didn't want to overwhelm you with an hour or more of Captain Comet. Not today. Captain Comet debuted in Strange Adventures number 9 in 1951. He was created by Julius Schwartz, John Broome, and Carmine Infantino. John Broome would write his stories, but under an alias. He's going by Edgar Ray Merritt. Carmine Infantino draws his first 3 stories, but for the majority of Captain Comet's 38 issues in Strange Adventures, he was drawn by Murphy Anderson, who is a highly regarded inker as well as artist. And also Murphy Anderson is going to help co-create Adam Strange later on, who is another hero in that kind of space adventurer vein. Now, Captain Comet is more of a science hero than a superhero in some ways, and that's partially down to the era that he's emerging in, and also the characters/specific character that he's drawing inspiration from. Captain Future. Now, usually if you look up Captain Comet, there'll be a little blurb about he was inspired by Captain Future. But let's get a bit more into it. So now, who is Captain Future? There's just so many captains out there. Captain Future was the title character of the magazine that bore his name. It was a pulp magazine. His civilian name was Curtis Newton, and his first appearance was in 1940. And he was created by Mort Weisinger, a name some may recognize as being a prominent editor at DC Comics, and Leo Margiles. Some people think that he's co-created by Edmund Hamilton because Edmund Hamilton did write most of his stories. Edmund Hamilton is also a name that some may recognize on this channel for writing a lot for DC Comics in the Golden Age, and a bit beyond, but largely there. Now, Captain Future as a series was announced at the First World Science Fiction Convention in 1939, a convention organized by science fiction superfan and also prominent sci-fi literary agent Julius Schwartz, who, as we've already discussed, will become one of the co-creators of Captain Comet, and would also go on to become a very important DC editor. Also, to further that connection, Schwartz and Weisinger had known each other for years and had co-founded one of the first science fiction fanzines, The Time Traveler. Fandom sometimes can get put down because there are some elements that can go too far. However, it also is something that has really helped keep a lot of these things alive and keeps interest going and can make things happen. Now, Captain Future ran until 1944, and for the first 4 issues, his magazine's subheading was Wizard of Science, which I adore. But after that, they changed it to Man of Tomorrow for the last 13 issues. They're around. They've been archived. Now, Curtis Newton explored space in the distant future of 1990, or at least he did until Edmund Hamilton quickly stopped giving the year, so you could just imagine when it would be. Lots of the sci-fi tropes are of the time, the idea that people could live on all the planets in the solar system, that there were just aliens everywhere. They're very classic in that way. They're very at home in the era that they're written in. Now, as for Curtis Newton, he's the son of Roger and Elaine Newton, who were murdered by a scientific rival, which leaves their son to be raised by an android, a robot, and their fellow scientist who had come to the moon with them, Simon Wright. Under their combined tutelage, Curtis grows up to be a regular Renaissance man, champion athlete, genius scientist, and with a set of morals that means that he wants to set out and help people around the galaxy, do good. That's the cliff notes, but you need to know a bit about him to understand how Captain Comet is like him and what he's homaging. Also, just because some will mention it if I don't, Captain Future got an anime adaptation. Now, as for the comic, Adam Blake, who is Captain Comet, debuts in, as mentioned, Strange Adventures, which was a comic series which ran from 1950 to 1973 and had 244 issues. It was also DC's first dedicated science fiction comic. This comic arrived during the boom of other genres post-World War II, as superheroes were declining in popularity, the era before they would return in force in the Silver Age, partially arising of necessity because of the coming of the Comics Code. So this year, when Captain Comet debuts in 1951, it's kind of an in-between zone, since the Silver Age is often stated to start with the coming of the Flash in the mid-50s. So some call it the Atomic Age, but usually only if they're dealing with a sci-fi character. If people are, say, talking about a late JSA story from All-Star Comics, sometimes they'll just say the late Golden Age. In general, the naming of American comic eras is fascinating, and people have a really hard time determining what to call the current era. League of Comic Geeks calls it the Plastic Age. I've also seen it called the Diamond Age. Some people just call it the Modern Age. For me, after much thought to toss my hat into the ring, I'd say from 2022 onward, I'd call it the Compound Age. Just because this is an era where you're seeing so many different elements of the past being pulled from, coming together, and then amalgamated into something new. It's all mashed up, hence the compound age. This is just an era where you can get so many throwbacks combined, and they're bringing this kind of unique energy because of that. I've thought way too much about this. But going back to the atomic or atom age, which has some of these superhero characters, but who also have a lot of science fiction elements to them. The science fiction elements are a bit more forward than the superhero elements. With all that said, let's take a look at Captain Comet, who was often featured on the cover of these issues, which had a decent amount of bait, particularly in the damsel area. Captain Comet rarely deals with damsels or with women in general. Now, the cover of issue 9 boasts that it contains the origin of Captain Comet, Tomorrow's Man, aka Man of Tomorrow, which is a bit of a connection to Captain Future. Not just in terms of the phrasing, but also thematically. Because Captain Comet is not going to be literally a man of the future, but in some ways they're going to bring that in, you shall see. They will also call him Man of Destiny. Also, it must be noted that they have a similar look, but this kind of jumpsuit space getup and that hair, it's not uncommon for science heroes. If you were adventuring in space, this was the fit and would continue to be so. Adam Strange also looks very similar to this when he debuts in 1958, although he's also got a helmet. He was a mystery to himself. Why, young Adam Blake wanted to know, was he so different from other people? How did it happen that there was no one else like him in the whole wide world? Where did he really come from? Who was he? All these questions, which might have unsettled an ordinary mind, only served to whet the brain and steel the mettle of the extraordinary youth who, without knowing it, was fated to fulfill a grand and awe-inspiring destiny on Earth as Captain Comet, first man of the future. Read now the startling story of The Origin of Captain Comet by Edgar Ray Merritt, aka John Broome, but he doesn't want to put his name on it. For some, and at certain periods, there was a fear of the stigma of writing for kids magazines. In Broome's case, though, it's an homage, and Julia Schwartz came up with it. It's parts of the names of Edgar Allan Poe, Ray Bradbury, and Abraham Merritt. Now, as for the story, we start at Adam's birth. He is born as a comet passes over the sky that makes the night as bright as day. And that same night the comet appeared, a baby was born in a small city amid humble surroundings. We'll call him Adam, dear, after your father, and also the first man, because he's going to be the first man of the future. In the old days, Martha, they'd say our son is bound to become a great man. Look at that sign in the sky. Now, his mom tells her husband to knock that off. She just wants Adam to be ordinary, but that is not what he is destined for. As he ages, he starts to show some interesting abilities. He seems to be able to locate missing items for people very easily, being able to know where they last left them. For example, he's able to find his mom's missing wedding ring with ease. He can read books within minutes and also retain them. He's quickly identified as having a photographic memory. And he can learn anything he sets his mind to, becoming, for example, an expert at playing the clarinet after only picking it up once. He's also great at sports. Now, all of this sounds good on the surface, but it sets Adam apart and it makes him profoundly lonely. But despite his successes, Adam was a lonely young man. I'm not like everyone else. I try to be, but I'm not, and people sense it and avoid me. However, in his senior year, they don't specify that it's college, but it is college. They'll kind of give some context cues later on. Things really take a leap forward when this girl is trying to get his attention and it goes awry. Then, in his senior year on an outing, a singular event occurred. Catch me, Adam, if you're not a scared cat. It's just, what are you doing, Betty? Careful, Betty, don't lose your footing. Even as Adam warned his companion, I slipped! Help! No one will be able to reach her in time. They're not wrong. Adam actually doesn't reach her in time, but it's at this point that his telekinetic powers manifest, and he's able to slow her down enough that he then does get there. And nobody else really sees this except for him, and Betty kind of figures out that something happened, but she's not sure what. She was falling to her potential death. A moment later, when Adam reached Betty, it must have been my imagination, Adam. For a moment, I thought, never mind what you thought, Betty. You're safe. That's the main thing. Also, you're never going to appear in one of these stories again. The whole thing was over so quickly that no one really knew what had happened, except Adam. I must have saved Betty by mental force. It was just as if I had gripped her with my hands from 15 feet away. But what does it all mean? Why should I possess a power like that? So desperate to learn about himself, he goes to a professor at the university, Professor Emery Zacro, a physicist that he knows, who also has a side hustle running experiments on ESP, extrasensory perception. This was a popular idea and field for a time, parapsychology, and ESP in particular was focused on for a bit. It was the idea that humans had a sixth sense, an ability to perceive things beyond the five senses, a kind of paranormal ability. And by the time this book was published, it would be something that people were aware of. And you would see these these extra senses tested with things like cue cards that would be hidden. You'd have to guess the shape on them. And they do also define it in this story. Captain Comet will often have editor's notes defining scientific concepts as they were understood at the time. Professor Zacro tried his subject out on ESP cards. Star. Right. It's phenomenal. You never miss. Editor's note. Cards designed to test extrasensory perception or ability at telepathy and clairvoyance. Zacro tests him on other things too, physical things. We'll see in the follow-up story that he had him drink poison. These tests could have gone very awry. But we do get an answer for Adam. Later, behind the carefully locked doors of Zacro's study. Oh, he locked it. Adam, brace yourself. You've heard, I'm sure, of human throwbacks, men born today with minds and bodies of the cavemen of 100,000 years ago. Well, think of the opposite of that. Scientifically, there is no reason why the opposite, an accidental specimen of future man, should not happen. It just never has, Adam. Till now. You mean that's what I am, Professor? No doubt of it. You are a mutant, born by chance far ahead of your time, with abilities which probably won't be common on Earth for 100,000 years or more. Editor's note. A mutant is a sudden, unexpected change in the natural slow development of a species. Look, he has zero muscle fatigue. Now, while Adam is more of a science-based hero, he will borrow some superhero tropes, such as having a secret identity.
Even though he is unmasked and does nothing to change his appearance.
He also slips very quickly into wanting to use his powers to fight the forces of evil. It's just that the evil will often come from space or be rogue science-based. And because of those kind of superhero elements and the fact that he's kind of aligned and positioned in that space, this could make Adam the first mutant superhero. He's coming in 12 years before the X-Men, and I couldn't find any other hero before this who is explicitly labeled over and over again as a mutant. Namor, for example, isn't labeled explicitly as a mutant until 1963 in a Fantastic Four annual. If you have, let me know, and then we'll do a whole follow-up, but I think it could be claimed that Captain Comet is the first superhero mutant coming into a world that loves and accepts him. They really like Captain Comet. They don't know he's a mutant though, but they do know he has special abilities, and they're really into it. In the future, Marvel will have brand recognition on the term mutant because of the X-Men, and so then DC will have to use the term metas. Funnily enough, it said that Stan Lee wanted to call the X-Men book The Mutants, but was told that it sounded too scientific. Captain Comet will not stop telling the reader that he is a mutant. Either he's doing it, the narration box is doing it, it reminds you all the time. But what does that mean for him? In these atomic stories, it means that he was born ahead of his time. He's a throw forward. He has all kinds of special abilities that humans should have in the future. Which means we're going to be casting forward to some of the things that people thought or hoped would happen for people. And that's also why top of that list, we're going to get a lot of the telepathic abilities. This is also a way that he's a man of the future, in another way that calls back to Captain Future. He's not literally from the future, but his abilities are, and he's a man of tomorrow. Now, okay, Adam's abilities. Zacro has him test his mind over matter ability, which is his telekinesis. But that's not a word that's in vogue yet. It exists, but it's not really thrown around. So in these stories, you'll often hear him just describe it as mind over matter. And there's one issue where they use the word telematic to describe the mind over matter ability. And this is an ability that Adam will regularly use. While he will sometimes manifest specific abilities for specific stories, there are some that are staples, and the telepathy and the telekinesis are some of those. Then suddenly, uncannily, mind over matter, the age-old dream of mankind, Adam, and you possess it. Mind over matter, that explains my rescuing Betty. Yes, the power is erratic now, not easy to control, but with practice and hard work, you will perfect it. Why does Adam look so scary in that second panel? So let's do a brief rundown of the powers that Adam has, because this is something that people tend to lambast Captain Comet over a little bit or lightly mock him for. It's a lot. And I'm only going to list some of them because, again, sometimes they'll just pop up for one story and then not be used again. And I don't feel that those fully count. It's like when Superman had the rainbow fingers for an issue. It's something to note, but not something people would tend to count as one of his standard powers. So for Adam, we have he's telepathic, telekinetic, super smart, super strong, able to withstand bullets, either because in certain stories it's because his body's really durable or because he's able to use his telekinesis to slow the bullets down, which is what we're going to see in this story. In terms of his telepathy, he's going to be shown to be a very accomplished telepath, able to read thoughts, project them, also block other telepaths, that's important. He does also have a code of ethics about this. He makes a note to not try and read people's minds or do it without permission. It's not something he's actively going around doing. His abilities will also evolve based on what the story needs, but if he is doing something new, the story points it out, and sometimes it's hard for him. Like the story where he has to project himself out into the astral plane or become a ghost. They do make a big deal about how he's never done this before and can he do it, and he is exerting effort to do it even though he ultimately can. He's also still vulnerable to things, because you will have later stories where even though he has all these abilities, he'll still have to use a weapon, for example. And also his stories focus more on creative solutions. Also, when he does fight people, he's often fighting aliens or some kind of scientific creation like a robot, a synthetic person, those kind of things. So they'll often be equal in power in some level so that he's then able to fight with an equal. So it's one of those things where on paper it sounds like he's incredibly overpowered, but the way that they work it out in the stories, it doesn't come across that way as much as it could. Now, as mentioned, Adam's first instinct upon learning about his gifts is that he wants to help in some way. He's just not sure how. His first thought is maybe he should offer himself up to science. Thankfully, the professor tells him to maybe think about that for a moment. And in the meantime, he has something for Adam to do. Before leaving, the professor decides to try Adam's skill in still another field. I'm going to show you something no one else has seen. Perhaps while I'm gone, you'll work on the problem. I'll do anything I can for you, Professor Zacro. On the glass-lined laboratory roof, a strange mechanism was unveiled. It's my solar reducer. Many years of study have led me to believe that there are minute particles of gold in sunlight. This machine should separate out the particles, but I can't make it work. This looks like a job for the man of tomorrow. Now, Adam is able to discern that the professor's formula is actually correct. It's just there's some technical problems with the machine, and so he sets to work fixing that. But little does he know, he's being watched by goons who appear to have just been lurking around hoping that the professor could get this device to work. And I guess that they've noticed the professor's struggling because they are very impressed with Adam and the fact that he actually gets it to do something. The next moment,
pal, you're terrific. Our gang can use you. You're coming with us. Now be smart and don't put up any fuss.
You men are criminals.
Born 100,000 years before his time. Extrasensory perception.
Adam is able to defeat these criminals. This is also where he learns that he's able to withstand a bullet. As mentioned, he slows it down with his telekinesis before it can get to him. He's gonna get both more and less durable as these stories go. He's never gonna be fully invulnerable though. And there are some of these stories where it gets kind of perilous. Soon after, at a nearby police precinct, Professor Zacro preferred charges, Sergeant. These men broke into his lab.
Thanks, son. Those hoodlums are wanted for half a dozen other jobs, too.
Adam's got that hands on the hips disappointed dad pose going. You know it's serious. Later, back at the lab, after Zacro has learned of the incident.
The poor fools. My solar reducer is not commercial. It is for science, not gain. Why, in a year it wouldn't produce $100 worth of gold, and the cost of the machine is $10,000.
Nobody tell the university that. Do they know?
But your adventure does teach us this, Adam. If you reveal yourself and your true powers to the world, evil men will seek to use you for their advantage. Unlike me, who got you to fix this gold machine. Your extraordinary talents must remain a closed book between the two of us. If you wish to help others, it must be in some new secret identity for safety.
I can see now that you're right, Professor. This positions Adam in a bit of a unique space in terms of having a superhero secret identity. It's not to keep his loved ones safe. It's also not so that he can do what he needs to do, because he could do it either way. But it's because he would be constantly set upon by people trying to co-opt his powers. It's a slightly different concern, and one that could have been a bit more interesting than how they play it at the time because of how lonely Adam's already admitted to being. Now he knows what's going on, but he's still separate from people and can't openly be himself, or feels/has been convinced he can't. Musing, Adam walks toward his room in the college town. Adam Blake will have to go on pretending to be like other people. No one must suspect what I really am. A man born by accident 100,000 years too soon. It won't be easy for me, but I have no choice. Don't worry, you'll have Zacro, your mentor/friend/later roommate. Although you could twist this relationship dark very easily in an edgy update. I wouldn't want someone to, but you could. But all of that was build up to the action beats of our story. He hasn't fully become Captain Comet yet, but he's about to. For that to happen, he needs an Earth-threatening menace. Enter the spinning tops of doom. Tops appear, spinning on the Earth, killing all who get in their path. Frenzied bulletins soon reach every corner of the nation. The top is still unharmed. An A-bomb was dropped on it by the Air Force. The top was not even scratched. Martial law has been declared. And so Adam leaps into action in a costume that I guess he had designed in the meantime. He must have also been anticipating going to space, because that is the look that he went with as panic spread like wildfire in a tiny room in a Midwest college room. Double room. The time has come for me to assume my secret identity. I was born just as an unknown brilliant comet flashed across the sky. So I will be Captain Comet, and Captain Comet's first assignment will be to halt that mysterious death-dealing top. The guy in the back is not sure how to feel about the Captain Comet outfit. Also, wasn't martial law declared? I think he should be inside. So here you see that it's Adam himself who starts to make the connection between the comet and his birth, which makes when they play more with that later on a solid retcon because you can really easily retroactively apply it back. But the next issue is the action, and we have Captain Comet on the cover with a damsel, which is a lie. This story features no dames. But it's also just that these covers sometimes make him look a bit more like a generic space action man than he is. It doesn't highlight the unique elements. This story is the air bandits from space, so you know he made the right call with the costume. The tops are all over Earth, and they are sucking the air out of the atmosphere. In 24 hours, the Earth will no longer be able to support life. And this radio announcer does not care. He is going to smoke until there's no more oxygen left.
There's only one ray of hope in the general despair here. A striking figure of a man calling himself Captain Comet passed through Los Negas a few minutes ago, heading for the top. No one had ever heard of him.
Then how did they know his name?
But there was something about the man that raised the courage of all who saw him. How he can succeed where others have failed is not clear.
Captain Comet? Who is he? Zacro is listening to this announcement, so he's able to give a flashback as to what happened. And we also see more of the tests, and that's how we learn about the poison.
In one of the tests I gave Adam Blake, he drank a deadly poison. 1 drop of that poison is enough to kill an ordinary man. You drank 3 ounces.
It must be that my futuristic body is immune to this acid. How many bodies in your closet, Professor? Did you tell him what he was drinking, or was he just gonna corrode from the inside? Adam is able to get close to the tops despite the radiation that we're now told they're putting out, because he is a mutant. And once he sees that they're radio controlled, he wants to know where the signal is coming from. And here we get to see him try and test out another power, and also how these powers tend to manifest. It's usually that there's some kind of problem, and then he starts to think that maybe there's a different way that he can approach it because he's a mutant. Still unaware of all his abnormal powers, the Man of Destiny prepares an experiment. You see, that's the other thing. They mentioned that he doesn't know. Zacro said it too, so that's how they can also justify adding in a lot of the powers, because he's still learning.
Ordinary eyes can see only the visible light spectrum, but maybe futuristic eyes like mine can detect the invisible spectrum, which includes radio waves.
Editor's note: the colors from violet to red make up the visible spectrum. In the invisible range are X-rays and radio waves. We're learning. Captain Comet is educational, but not always accurate. Captain Comet is able to trace the radio waves to space, and so he rushes to Zacro's lab, and there he builds a spaceship because Zacro had some blueprints for that. He is just doing all the things. Does the university know that it's funding all these things? In Professor Zacro's secluded laboratory soon after.
Even though I know Adam is a mutant, watching him work amazes me. Of course, his muscles can never tire. That's one explanation.
Editor's note: a mutant is a change, a sudden jump in the slow evolution of a species. I read that again to just highlight that they will not stop telling you. Also, stop watching Adam work. Nobody likes that. And stop talking out loud about his muscles. He can hear you. So in a few hours, Adam has a spaceship, and it's good because TikTok, we're running out of air. He calls the spaceship the Cometeer, and this is a deliberate homage. Captain Future's ship is called the Comet, and in that way, it's also possible to think of the comet in Adam's origin as potentially a reference to this too, and also in his hero name. For now, Captain Comet has to get to the dark side of the moon, and there he finds that there's a massive ship lurking back there, so big that he's able to dock inside of it, and his ship looks tiny. And so he goes in to see just what he's dealing with. As the Man of Destiny surveys the enormous hall he has landed in, a fantastic spectacle meets his gaze. Glass cases, hundreds of them, and each one containing a human-like creature in a trance-like state. Still, there must be someone controlling this ship. But Adam finds no one when he gets to the bridge. But then one of the aliens awakens. This alien is also a telepath, because the idea is that if a race is advanced, that they would have telepathy. And so they're able to have this instant exchange where they can just exchange all the information within seconds. This is something Adam can also do. He can tell a story in a few seconds by projecting it into people's minds telepathically. It's quite convenient. He learns that this is Haroon, leader of the Astur, an alien race, just as Haroon learns about Captain Comet. He learns that this race came from an airless world and that their planet was destroyed when a passing star destabilized their planet. Missed opportunity for it not to have been the same comet that appeared when Adam was born. Just saying. Now, Haroon put his people in suspended animation, and this vessel has been automated, and it's been traveling for hundreds, perhaps thousands of years. They say they were looking for a perfect airless planet, but also clearly one with air was on the table because they had these tops ready to suck all the air off. And Adam is not down for that. Humanity first. Now, Haroon thinks violence is vulgar, and also he recognizes that Adam is an equal and feels that that means that they need to do something that's more of their level. They need to play a game. The Astur chieftain proposes a unique contest to decide supremacy, a game called E-Check.
In this E-Check vase, there are 100,000 black pellets and 2 white ones. The winner is he who, without using vision, can select a white pellet in the least number of tries.
you go first. Now, Haroon gets one on the 4th try because he's feeling for the weight. There's a slight difference in how much they weigh. Adam knows this, but he needs a faster method to guarantee that he picks it in less tries. And so he taps into yet another mutant power. This one is kind of synesthesia based, which is really hard for me to say, but it's a cool power, so I want to talk about it. He's able to adjust his fingers so that they can feel color, so he can tell what color it is by touching it. Now, Haroon says that's cheating, but is it though? No, it's not. We heard the rules. Also, wow, the future. Can't wait to feel colors. Maybe taste them too. I mean, some people already do that. Synesthesia. I gotta say it slow. I cannot say it fast. And that's hard for me because I talk fast. Now, Haroon takes off saying he's gonna kill Captain Comet, which Adam does take seriously, but first he has to stop the tops. Now, Haroon was going to wake up his people, but before he can, Adam hits him with the truth that he hadn't noticed yet. None of the Astors survived. Haroon was the only one. The cases that he made, just over time, they've become tombs. It's just been too long. Now all his people are just perfectly preserved corpses. It's really sad, and Haroon can't take it. This was his entire purpose, and he's finally awakened, and there's this place, and there's no one left. And so he kills himself. He ejects himself into space. Now, Captain Comet tries to save him, and he does it right away, too. It's not an afterthought. He instantly sees what he's trying to do and tries to get there, but he's not fast enough. And so Haroon is killed by the cold of space, which the editor's note gives us an estimated temperature for. Captain Comet does get his body, and then he returns it to the ship, which then automatically takes off and starts looking for another planet. And Adam, are there still tops? Are they still active? Because this could be a problem for somewhere else. As the Mammoth Stellar ship hurtles away into the void. What irony. A ship full of dead creatures searching through the universe for an ideal world for them to live on. Adam, the tops! That night in Professor Zacro's laboratory. I know it's laboratory, but just sometimes you feel like you gotta say laboratory. The atomic age is one of those times. Earth saved by Captain Comet. How did they learn his name? That's why you gotta have that cheesy scene where somebody's like, "Who are you, mysterious stranger?" And then they can go, "I'm Captain Comet."
The world is acclaiming you, Adam.
Not me, Professor. Captain Comet. Remember our pact. No one must ever suspect my secret identity. Adam, stop casually stripping back there while you're talking about your pact. Now, Captain Comet has some very fun adventures during this era. And because we're not going to focus on all of them in this video, let me just give you some highlights of what his status quo kind of is. He gets a job. He's a mild-mannered librarian / library information clerk. It is a job that he also likes. There's this librarian, Miss Torrance. Her first name will change. Who's super into him in a couple of stories, and he could care less about, except for some stories where there's a throwaway line or two. Also, it doesn't feel like the creators care about her either because her hair color and appearance keep changing. She does have one kind of cool story in issue 37 though. Also, Adam has a space girlfriend, a long distance space girlfriend, which is an element that is going to be taken and applied to Adam Strange. Because in these stories, he only sees her twice, but the whole deal with her is that she is his mental equal because he's looking for someone that he can talk to, and that's a real problem for him. And so when he meets somebody who is also a mutant who has some of the same abilities, they really hit it off. But she becomes queen of her world, so she's busy. And Adam's busy, and there's just no time. And that's just also not the focus of his adventures. Also, some people may want to read into like the Zacro roommate thing, but that is also a detail that floats in and out. Sometimes they say it's what's happening, sometimes it's not. Zacro is part mentor, plus also perpetually impressed by Adam. I wish they had done more with him and Radia, his space girlfriend, but again, we'll get to see that dynamic with Adam Strange later on. They do throw in a couple of other love interests, but they never really stick, and he never seems particularly interested in them. He does sometimes take Zacro on adventures with him later on as things go on, and he also develops a relationship with the Guardians of the Universe, different than the ones who we will later see in the Green Lantern lore. But what they are is they keep the universe in check and make sure everything is running properly, and in a couple of stories they need Adam's help. He also has more than one adventure with a gorilla. Also, a surprising amount of stories end with the death of his foes. Usually not because he directly kills them, sometimes he does it indirectly. Like the one where he meets all the Greek gods in space and they die. That one's really interesting. You know, after these I always want to do a retrospective on the character in question. They're so interesting. The giant mutant bees, the deadly chess game. Captain Comet just stops being written as of Strange Adventures 49, and then he's shelved until the 70s when Jerry Conway brings him back for the Secret Society of Supervillains, a book that died during the DC implosion of 1978. But he was popular when he was brought back. People liked him. There was a vote in that time period for who should join the Justice League, and he came in second. Also, there was talk of giving him his own series, but then implosion. The explanation given as for why he was still around was that he had vanished in space and that he hadn't aged. Also, they add an ability to Adam, which is that he can control how people perceive him, which is also interesting. They're still using that in the Action Comics stories that he's appearing in time of recording 2025. After being brought back, he would also have his origin retold. And one of the times it happens is in the 80s, which was a period where he had a couple of cameos in some books and also 2 team-ups. The origin retelling is by Roy Thomas in 1987 in Secret Origins Annual Number 1, and it's really similar. Perhaps we should compare the two one day. I like comparing origin stories. The ending is very different though. Adam is way more depressed in the 1987 ending. He's also drawn far younger in the 1987 version.
But my boy, the world is acclaiming you.
Not Adam Blake, Professor. Captain Comet. And if they really knew that Captain Comet was a mutant, one as alien to them in his way as Haroon was, I wonder how long it'd be before they were screaming for my blood. I feel like you can see the X-Men influence on the word mutant here, because this was not a problem in terms of the original Atomic Age stories. It wasn't that people would hate him because he was a mutant. It was because people would try and use him to their advantage or maybe study him too much. I kind of like that in the Atomic Age stories, everybody really likes Captain Comet and is super happy to see him all the time. It's just nice energy. It's that same energy that you got in Fantastic Four First Steps, just that people are really enthusiastic that they have a hero to come help them. Now, some may remember Captain Comet from his time in the Legion series, where he was added in 1990, where he was a replacement for Adam Strange, who was initially going to be added to the team. But Adam Strange was doing his own thing in his own series at the time. Now, Captain Comet ended up having another hiatus after the 90s, but you do see him pop up into Elseworld stories. The Golden Age is one that people reference because he gets kicked in the groin by transferred brain Hitler, and then it ends up being a photo that's used. He's also positioned very interestingly in that book as heralding the coming of the Silver Age, which is not a position that people tend to place him in. He also dies in Kingdom Come. That's one that people remember. I'm cliff noting here, by the way. I'm not mentioning every single appearance, so if there's one that I don't mention and you thought was amazing, please put it down below, or you just want to mention it. In the main universe, he was also used in the Rand Thanagar War miniseries, also in the Mysteries in Space miniseries, the Rebel series. That was in 2009. But when it came to the New 52 in 2011, Grant Morrison makes a version, and this is where the Comet is explicitly linked to the metagene, but a surprising amount of the origin stays for a Morrison update. Comet was used a bit in Action Comics and Supergirl. You would see Captain Comet in a mini called Telos in 2016, and Captain Comet was kind of lapsed, floating. But 2025 sees him back in action again, this time as a teacher to a young Superboy, because Superboy is once more Clark Kent. That's been worked back into his history. So we'll see what ends up happening with Captain Comet. Captain Comet is one of those characters who many people have a fondness for, and they're always like, maybe this time. Maybe this time. I think each era of Captain Comet is interesting in its own right, but I have a special fondness for the Atomic Age. I just really like classic sci-fi and just the enthusiasm and creativity of these stories. So that's Captain Comet, the first mutant superhero. Man of destiny, man of tomorrow, self-proclaimed captain. If you'd love to hear more about Captain Comet, or if you like this video, hit the like button, hit that hype button, please. I really want to talk about the time that he was de-evolved to being a monkey. Reject humanity, embrace monkey. Or the time that he had to face that army of synthetic men. Or that time he got really jealous of this woman from the future, and then it turned out that what she was actually something very different. What do you think of Captain Comet? Do you have a favorite era? Are you fond of him? Is he not your cup of tea? Please share your thoughts, and while you're down there, please do all the YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification, hype button, all the things, all the YouTube things. Thanks so much for taking some time to spend discussing comics with me. I always appreciate it, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.